Joanna Newsom, worst to best. I am excited to do this because Joanna Newsom has always been one of my long-time favorite musicians, if you will. I guess I could never rank my favorite musicians of all time because that would be so difficult to do. But when we're talking about my all-time favorites, she is always in the conversation, no doubt. Joanna Newsom is a musician from Northern Carolina. I guess you could say she dabbles in classical music. She's been known to be a harpist and utilizes the harp on almost every album and gives off this very unique sound that not many other people in our current generation could say that they even remotely sound anything like Joanna Newsom. She has an incredibly distinct voice. Her music has always sounded otherworldly in the sense that it really does sound like it could be coming from centuries ago. And her work has always been regarded as highly critically acclaimed. Anyone that knows Joanna Newsom's music probably loves Joanna Newsom's music. It's just one of those cases where she might not have that widespread worldwide fame or whatever, but the music people that know. And I thought it'd be great to do a worst to best of her music because I do think it genuinely is quite special, and this worst to best series is only saved for the special musicians, the greatest of the greatest. Let's get into this list. Before actually I get into the list, do let me know your list, of course. Remember, this is my list. You might agree with it, you might disagree, and you know, it's all fun, it's all part of the conversation. But maybe just put your list in the comments or give an opinion about her music or whatever you want to do. Have One on Me, the 2010 release from Joanna Newsom, her third studio album, and in fact her longest and perhaps most ambitious album to date. Now, I'm going to say that I like every release that Joanna Newsom has made, just for the record. And even though this is at number 4, I do think it is easily her weakest album because I just think it runs just a little too long. I think at times the music just pales in comparison to Joanna Newsom's voice, her musicianship, her talent. All of that seems to rise to the top, and some of the songs just end up falling because of how much she has to offer. She's always got a great story to tell, for sure, but when you've got 18 tracks that runs 2 hours long, I can't help but feel that this album just ends up falling short in quite a few places, which is not common for Joanna Newsom, actually. I think she's always managed to balance the great musicianship with the great storytelling, and I think on this album there are just too many cuts that pale in comparison to her best work. But it's still a good album, that's the thing. She doesn't make bad releases. This is still a good album. If you were new to Joanna Newsom's music, this would be a hefty place to start, but if you're one of those people that absolutely loves gargantuan long pieces of music, then you're probably going to find a lot to love from this. But again, I just think a few tracks every now and then take my attention away and stuff like that, so it just ends up being the least essential release in her discography, in my opinion. But if you disagree, that's totally okay. Though I have never known. Yeah, this might get a few people questioning my reasoning here, because I know that Yeast is highly regarded as Joanna Newsom's best album, and I totally see why, and I absolutely think it's a fantastic album. Remember what I said, it's Joanna Newsom. I wouldn't regard any of her music bad, so just because it's at number 3 doesn't mean I don't like it. Now, this release, in terms of songwriting, hands down her best. If you were just looking at this from a lyrical standpoint, from her storytelling, from Joanna Newsom being one of the best raconteurs in music ever, then you would point at Yeast and say Yeast is the best one. Emily, Only Skin, Jesus Christ, these tracks are unbelievable. They are absolutely incredible. They are detailed, especially Only Skin, which is like a 60-minute lengthy track. The amount of detail she packs in, the storytelling, and towards the end where the instrumentation kind of like builds even further, it is unbelievable. I would actually say my favorite track is the final track, track number 5, which isn't as referenced as often as the other tracks, but I think it's because perhaps the storytelling on this one isn't as essential as the other cuts, but the music on this one is pretty fantastic. Why this is at number 3 for me is because I think it can be a bit of a tasking listen at times. You really have to sit and focus on everything that's going on, and I wouldn't say musically, even though there are some amazing moments, I wouldn't put it as her top album musically, honestly, because I just think some tracks go on for like 9 minutes. I mean, most of the tracks actually go on for at least 8 minutes, and it can just be a little bit hard to focus on the story at times, and you really have to engage yourself with every listen. But honestly, it's a masterpiece. Like, don't take my word as this isn't a good album. It is a masterpiece. Impeccable storytelling throughout, absolutely unbelievable, just like an amazing feat for music history. I think in terms of the 2000s, this is absolutely one of the greatest albums that came from that decade, absolutely. As I've said, there's really no one like Joanna Newsom, but there are 2 albums above this one, so what's gonna be number 1? What's gonna be next? Whatever's next, you know what's gonna be number 1. So what's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? It is in fact Divers at number 2, her most recent release actually, her 2015 album. An album that just sucks me in every time. Like, I cannot escape this world. Every time I listen, I just find the most unbelievable amounts of just, Now, as I said about Have One on Me, I just felt that musically it pales at times. But she returned 5 years later with an album that aesthetically I think is almost a new style and sound for Joanna Newsom. It's not a complete reinvention of her style, but there are just little niggly changes on this album that really do bring out a different side to her music, which you probably wouldn't expect so far into her career. One thing you will know about Joanna Newsom is that a lot of her music is very much just Joanna singing and a harp, which sounds gorgeous and beautiful as you would absolutely expect it to be. But on Divers, I think she just decided to add new layers to the instrumentation, you know, on tracks like Sapo Canican. I always forget how you pronounce that word, man. Sapo Canican, I think it is. But yeah, Sapo Canican? On this track, you will know, like, there are drums, there are different added layers into the mix. In Leaving the City right towards the end, there's just like epic drum fill that comes through. It's just really interesting to hear Joanna try this sort of modernized sound, I guess, in her music. It just adds a new rich flavor to everything that already made her music so fantastic. The wonderful, absolutely whimsical feel to her music hasn't gone away. It's just there are new features added into the mix that I just think helped carry the songs a bit better. She ended up writing and crafting better music in comparison to an album like Have One on Me. Yeah, I just think this is an album that's always stuck with me a bit more than Yeast and Have One on Me, just because the songs are just more I guess tangible, perhaps, maybe. I don't know, perhaps I'm a normie and I just prefer my music simpler, but even still, it's not a simple and basic, straightforward album. It is incredible, and I still regard it as one of the best of this decade, actually. It's probably going to be very high on my decade end list when we get around to doing that, which is actually pretty soon, which is kind of scary, isn't it? So that means you know what's my number 1. You know.
Should we go outside? Should we go outside?
Milk Hyde Mender, the Milk Milk-Eyed Mender. I will never forget the first time I laid my ears on this album. Holy shit. I mean, I can't exactly remember when and where I was, so technically I have forgot. But I will not forget the feelings I got listening to this. It was like I was entering another world listening to this album. Honestly, to this day, I couldn't even pinpoint an album that sounds remotely close to this. The melodies she conjures up on this album, the absolute melodies, like most of these tracks again are just Joanna and a harp, and yet it's just such a playful feel to this album, especially on tracks like Peach Plum Pear, which is such a strange little oddity of a song, but everything about it is just so fantastic to me. Just the way she goes on these little detours mid-song as well, and how like each track just manages to bring out something new in her voice, and she just manages to change things up despite the fact there's very little in the way of instrumentation. It's just fantastic. Sprout and the Bean, great friggin' song, one of the best ever songs I would say. Book of Right On too. I mean, the Roots went on to sample the Book of Right on their 2010 album. If the Roots are out here sampling your music, you know it's fucking good. I just think the way she enunciates every word and syllable on this album is just so much more impactful than anything else she's ever managed to release, to be honest, which is why I think it's stuck with me so deeply in regards to her discography and why I think it's her best. A good example of that would be Inflammatory Writ, which is a more piano-based track actually, and even over these instrumentals, she just has so much character to her voice and brings so much that not many musicians can say that they have in the way of talent. Honestly, I really can't point to many others in our generation that's really on par with Joanna Newsom. So yeah, I've sung her praises for the entirety of this video. I feel as though my point has been put across pretty directly. I think Joanna Newsom is fantastic. The Milk-Eyed Mender, my favourite Joanna Newsom album. Please comment and let me know what yours is, and if you disagree, also let me know as well. I'm sure many people will be disagreeing, but it's one of those cases where like I think any album could be your favourite and I'd go, yeah, that's fine. There's certainly a debate and conversation to be had, but I think there are just other artists out there that have a bit more of a disagreement factor when it comes to ranking albums, which I will touch on in this series as well, which will be really exciting to get more of these done, because it's a lot of fun to do, and I hope you enjoyed this. Share it as well if you're a big Joanna Newsom fan, that would be great. Subscribe to the channel as well if you're not already subscribed. I will be doing more of these, reviews, whatever the hell else I get up to as well on this channel, all music related. Have a good day. Subscribe. Goodbye.